So this is beyond a dream for me to be joined by Grutle from Enslaved. Thank you for your time for joining me. It's much appreciated.
Well, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
So your new 16th album, Heimdal. Is that pronounced right?
Heimdal, yeah,
Heimdal,
the
sorry.
difficult 16th album.
The difficult 16th album. It's mad. A 30-year career, 16 albums. Does it get any easier writing albums as you become
Yes,
more
yes,
mature?
it actually does. I mean, it might sound strange, but it does. Uh, Mainly because after 15 albums, we have gathered a lot of inspiration, and we are still exploring music, and we are pretty much collecting information, collecting inspiration, and so the inspiration bank is quite big. So there we have lots of different angles and things to try out when we are making the demos, making the songs ready for the studio production. So it's actually more enjoyable and also a little bit easier than it was, let's say, 20 years ago. So yeah, it's still very enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, this album, I've had it now for, I think I got it on Thursday or Friday, and I haven't stopped spinning it. It's just an absolute joy to listen to. It's spectacular. And I'm just wondering, for your fans, what would you explain them? What can they expect from this album in terms of an Enslaved album?
Oh, first of all, it's a little bit different from the previous one,
Mhm.
and it's it's a little bit more similar to we released an EP 2 years ago called Caravans to the Outer Worlds, and that was the experimental stepping stone, so to speak, to kind of we use that to pan out the direction of Heimdal. So it's Heimdal is where Utgard was perhaps the closest we got to classic rock structure, like verses and refrains and stuff like that. Heimdal is a bit more trippy. We have like longer instrumental passages, more like dreamy sound landscapes. It's a bit more intricate, I guess. It took me personally, it took me a little longer to get like kind of understand the songs. Eva sent me some instrumental demos, and I spent some time to kind of get them under my skin and figure out what to sing over the different parts and put together some lyrics. And the album feels it's more like layers in it. There's more headset candy, maybe. There's lots of details, even in seemingly at first glance primitive parts. You can actually hear that there's a lot of things going on there as well. So I think it will be a really interesting album to dive into for our fans. Maybe not so immediate, but definitely something you could dive into and enjoy exploring, hopefully.
100%. Layers exactly right. And I think that the song for me, and you may have your own take on your favorite song on the album, but The Eternal Sea for me really epitomizes what you were talking about there. Like the dreamy soundscapes, you've still got the electronic stuffs on there, the juxtaposition with the clean vocals and the growls as well. Like, do you have a favorite track on the album?
Oh man, that's kind of that always changes. So right now, it's probably Forest Dweller for me right now because we just released that as a single, and it kind of pops up everywhere, and I'm currently rehearsing on that song now and getting ready for a live performance. So Forest Dweller right now. I love the dynamics of that song. It like changes, and there's like uh, pretty mellow, almost Genesis-like landscapes, and then bang into extreme metal and even heavy metal stuff that kind of remind you of a good old Iron Maiden rips, and then it just morphs into something that sounds like it's inspired by David Bowie, something like that. So it's a lot of changes in that song, and I really love that changes in the dynamics.
In terms of releasing singles, this is something for progressive metal bands or bands like that. When you're looking to release a single, like for example, Homebound of Utgard was a perfect single to release, like on its own. This album, because like you said, it's more expansive. Is it more difficult to pick singles to release? And would you prefer it if you could just give everyone the finished package and say, here you go and enjoy it?
Yeah, the latter.
Yeah,
I like listening to whole albums myself. I'm not. I'm not crazy about singles, because I mean a single is just a fragment. I'm an old school album guy, and
yeah,
but I mean, I basically said for me whatever is fine. I mean, I think all the songs could have the potential to stand out as single as on their own. So I said, yeah, just go ahead, pick them. So I think Ivar did that together with the management, and I was like totally fine with that. I just
yeah.
I, I just picked the single artwork. Yeah.
No, because a lot in this day and age, people want music now, and obviously fans want to see what is upcoming. But I take, for example, like Tool, when they released one of their singles off the new album, and it just didn't connect. And it's only when you hear the full album front to back that you can understand albums. And I think that's the same for your new album as well. Not taking away
Yeah,
the fact that the singles are great, but I think when you hear it all together, it makes more sense.
it does, and of course, I mean, the running order of the album is never random. I mean, I don't think many bands have a random setup on an album. So I mean, every song is a piece of the of the whole puzzle. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And the album itself, because obviously the your albums are about Norse mythology, etc. In terms of Heimdal, was it the concept was first and then you started writing music, or did you have music ready and then built the concept on that?
Well, I mean, we usually, me and Eva will usually pan out that concept, make like some sort of a backdrop for the whole writing process. So we did that before we started writing lyrics, actually, and have like at least a vague idea what what to write about. I mean, Heimdal is a pretty uh, enigmatic concept, because his origins are so shrouded, so unclear, and therefore extremely interesting, of course. So we try to make a like some sort of a background for the stories, and that kind of inspired the whole effort of writing the album and doing the arrangements, making the demos. So yeah, that was and we such a concept. I mean, we had to turn so many stones to be, there's a long road to try to learn to understand Heimdal and its origins. So that was a fantastic journey, really inspiring.
Is it daunting as well, though?
Daunting. I don't know. I don't even know what that means.
Sorry, is it sort of quite a scary experience having this, concept and all that, like you said, turn a lot of stones. Was it sort of like a scary experience to try and put it all into the music and make it all connect?
No, not really. I mean, those things are really, really interesting. I mean, I always get, let's say, if I'm watching a movie by, let's say, David Lynch
Mhm.
or Stanley Kubrick, and when I can't find all the pieces of the puzzles, yes, it can be frustrating, and yes, it can be really intriguing, but it's also very satisfactory because it's like you're turned on all the time. You know, it creates a certain energy. You know, the searching for the answers that gives the whole effort a certain energy. So I wouldn't say it was daunting. No, it was
Uh,
more inspiring. Yeah.
do you think you're ever gonna run out of ideas for albums? Like, I mean, the whole Norse mythology and I mean Norwegian history is so deep. Like, I assume you're never going to run out of ideas.
No, I mean that's the thing is that with Norwegian early history, you have to lean towards archaeology, and you have to lean towards sources, written sources from outsiders, because we Norwegian Scandinavians were really skeptical to written scripts. They didn't trust, and I mean they thought that a scripture could always be falsified. So so that they leaned much more towards the like poems, oral poems, and believe it or not, they were really skeptical towards written manuscripts. So they didn't write anything down before the Icelandic uh, scholars in the 11th and monks, monks in the 11th and 12th century. So some of the history, some of the stories largely depend on observers from like Adam of Bremen and Ibn Fadlan from the Islamic Caliphate. He wrote stories about he observed the Viking rituals and stuff like that, and also British manuscripts, stuff like that. So uh, the whole thing with history is a lot of theories and guessing and turning of stones to begin with, and also interpreting the sagas, because they were written so many centuries after the actual event. So, and they were written down by Christian scholars, and of course they wanted to like put a lid on a lot of the stories, and to make them a little bit burlesque and ridiculous, because they were heathens. So there it won't run out, because there's an ongoing research and like all the time, and nowadays you have like some really interesting scientific researchers going on, like genetic research, you have archaeological DNA, strontium analysis and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that history research from that period. So it's like really fascinating. And I know a couple of scholars that I usually bother with late night phone calls and asks if did they really find First Nation American DNA in Iceland? So,
That's fascinating that you actually are calling scholars to verify this. That's amazing.
so, yeah. So I don't think we will ever run out of inspiration when it comes to those themes.
And
So
that's
yeah.
fantastic. Fantastic to hear from a fan's perspective as well. In terms of set lists now going forward, you're 16 albums in. Like, I mean, how hard is it getting set lists? Because on the one hand, you have your own shows, your enslaved headlining shows. which the fans are there for, and would most likely want to hear the newer stuff live. But when it comes to festival slots where you're trying to, earn new fans, is it getting more difficult these days the more you're progressing with albums?
Of course, a bit. I mean, our songs are quite long, so even if we played one song from each album, the set list would be far too long. So there, some albums are going to be always going to be let out anyway. So, but I mean, for a tour, it's going to be like 3 or 4 songs from the new album, maybe 1 or 2 from Utgard, and it's going to be like 2 or 3 old classics, and then we have to like pick some songs from some like live favorites from, let's say, albums like Below the Lights, Rune, maybe Isa, and that's it. That's the 75 minutes on a tour set.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing you in Dublin. You supported Opeth, and I think
yeah,
had I think it was during In Times, that album release, and you had
yeah.
maybe 3. I think you maybe only played 3 songs. I think they were all off In Times, which is a shame. But then I saw you as well last year in Oslo at Tons of Rock, and that was a great set list. Sorry, I'm not dismissing the previous one, but for a festival like that was a really good set list, and like having Havenless in there, Homebound. It was a great package. I mean, sorry, that was just more of a statement, but
well, thank you.
and that was my first time going to Norway, and I've always been fascinated with Norway because obviously the black metal scene there. But I mean, it's just such a wonderful country, and I mean, unfortunately, that weekend was the weekend when the attacks happened, which put a down on it. But just the spirit of Norwegian people was so uplifting. The next day they were all together in unity, and just sorry again, this is just a sweeping statement to say I'm a big fan of Norway. So just coming back to live events as well, you were one of the first to do the live stream during COVID, and I'm just wondering, like obviously you had no choice, there was no live touring, but I'm wondering now with the live streaming, do you think that is something that could come into play more often for bands?
You mean, do I think there's going to be more pandemics? Yes.
Well, hopefully not that.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me actually, but I mean, when it happens, I think it is pretty inevitable. Yeah, that's a solution. That's a format I can live with. I was really skeptical when the first like online shows popped up, because it was all of these singer-songwriters having concerts in their bedroom and charging money. I was like, oh, no, I don't want to walk into that,
Yeah.
So we got invited to play like an online festival with a real production, so which was like worth it. I don't know if that was a free event or if it was paid for a review. I can't even remember the first one. I think, wasn't that free?
I think the first one was free, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because we got invited by this festival, and So, but I mean, it was cool with a real production, like a real gig. It was not just a mobile phone camera in the rehearsal place, but because I think that's kind of lame, and that's kind of taking advantage. But I mean, play a real show, something that looks like you would do on stage. Then it makes sense. And of course, it was the second best thing to do in this situation, and we think it worked. So that's why we continued and set up some shows with our own production. and they resulted in those live albums and live DVDs, and it kept us busy during the whole of 2020 and parts of 2021. And we had some small gigs there, you know, like with limited capacity in between restrictions and stuff like that. And those concerts, they were even more weird to perform, because you had like a full stage setup, and you had like 50 people sitting on chairs. Yeah, that was like that was super weird. So I would say it was actually easier to play those streaming events, because you had no audience at all, and you could only interfere with the other members of the band, and
Yeah.
it was like playing in huge rehearsal space, like a pre-production or something like that. So that was weird, of course, too. But I mean, that felt more natural actually than to play in front of 50 people sitting there polite and ordering beer to their small stupid tables. That was not something I could get used to.
Really?
No, that was that was too weird for me. I mean, as live shows should be some. It's all about the energy exchange, you know, between the band and the audience, symbiosis you create, and it was impossible to create that when like there's like 50 people that clapping polite like a politicians speak in the 1920s. It was just weird. I like it more to be like the British Parliament, where everybody's shouting.
A raucous crowd throwing
Order, order.
That's a very good British accent, by the way. And I suppose just combine a couple of questions. You're doing a few European dates this year, and one of them, which I'm delighted to see, is you're playing Arctangent again, which I believe you were supposed to play last year.
Yeah.
And didn't. So that's going to be fantastic. Have you ever been to Arctangent before?
No, I haven't. We had to cancel last year because we had another baby, me and the wifey. So
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It just got too close. I couldn't really risk traveling away. So that's the reason. But I'm looking forward to that. Should be. It's a little different festival. Different. Yeah.
It's a lovely small festival.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it's in Bristol, is it?
In Bristol, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. I like Bristol. I played there a couple of times. I like it's a good city. Good cider in Bristol, I seem to remember.
A good cider country indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you drive in, you come through like loads of mountains and forests on the way in. It's really, really nice way to get to the festival. And then also you're doing Bergen, playing Eld in full at is it Hole in the Sky?
It's beyond the Gates.
Beyond the Gates, sorry.
Which is it's kind of the Hole in the Sky successor.
Yeah. So are your gigs in Bergen, are they your favorite? Not to dismiss the other ones either, but you know.
It's the logistics are really easy because we have a rehearsal place there, and the backline company we use are based in Bergen, so it's of course the most convenient gigs we have. We have like family and friends there, and it's always something special to perform in Bergen, definitely. But I mean, the live playing thing. It's still really enjoyable, and I don't think you can be able to create the same atmosphere basically everywhere. You know, it's all about. I still like Bon Scott's approach to the whole thing with live playing. You should always have in mind that you are playing at a huge stadium in front of thousands of people. Either if you are doing so or playing in front of 50 people, it should be attitude and approach, and I try to live by that. I think that's a good live performance attitude.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Final question. Thank you for your time again, by the way, much appreciated. And this has been a lovely chat. Final question for you. Would we see Heimdal played in full, do you think, one day?
Oh, that really depends. I mean, if there is a demand for it, yeah. And but that usually never happens until the album is like has passed 20 years, you know. So in 20 years, I'll be turning 70 years old. So
So
we'll see.
perfect.
If I can sit in a chair while
Yeah.
I'll be delighted to do it.
Just
Maybe in
someone
maybe in a wheelchair.
I was going to say someone wheeling you out in a wheelchair to the front.
Yeah.
Oh, superb. Listen, thank you so much for your time, Grutle, and I can't wait to see you at some point this year. Best of luck with the album release and best of luck for the tour as well. Thank you so much for your time. It's much appreciated.
Oh, pleasure on my side. Thanks. Good chat, man.
Good, and I'll definitely be seeing you at some point this tour. So, best of luck with the baby as well.
Thank you so much, Chris, and have a nice day.
And you, thanks a lot. See you, man.
Thanks a lot. See you, man.